Tom Cruise approaches the entrance of his upscale condominium complex as twilight descends, riding his distinctive motorcycle. Dressed in casual attire, he is immediately confronted by a security guard who fails to recognize him and regards him with evident suspicion. What transpired next with the security guard left everyone astonished and resulted in an outcome that nobody could have anticipated. But before delving deeper into this remarkable story, we'd love to know which part of the world you're watching from. And if these kinds of stories resonate with you, remember to subscribe to our channel, as we have another captivating narrative scheduled for release tomorrow. The sun was setting over Los Angeles, creating a magnificent display. The heavens were adorned with amber and rose hues, as if the metropolis was bidding the day farewell with a spectacular visual symphony. The fading daylight cast elongated shadows across the tree-lined avenues, while the distant purr of a classic motorcycle grew increasingly audible. Tom Cruise was astride his Triumph Thruxton RS, an elegant machine with character, perfectly suited for someone of his disposition. Upon reaching the condominium entrance, Tom reduced his speed and positioned his motorcycle adjacent to the security booth. The towering contemporary gates were bordered by walls covered with climbing ivy, lending the establishment an atmosphere of exclusivity and refinement. The residential complex appeared to be a sanctuary, the type of locale where external disturbances couldn't penetrate. It represented the ideal residence for someone like him, private, tranquil, and removed from the urban chaos. As he removed his protective headgear, revealing features that countless individuals worldwide would instantaneously identify, Tom offered a friendly smile to the security personnel. The guard, maintaining a rigid stance and immaculately dressed uniform, approached with a vigilant, somewhat doubtful gaze. It was evident that he regarded his responsibilities with extreme seriousness. "Good evening, are you a resident here?" "I don't believe I've seen you before," the guard inquired. His tone remained courteous, yet carried an undercurrent of skepticism. Still holding his helmet beneath one arm, Tom responded in his characteristic calm, amiable manner. "Good evening, yes, I recently moved in. My name is Tom Cruise." The guard hesitated, furrowing his brow momentarily. He seemed to be processing the information just provided. Surely he recognized the name, who wouldn't? However, the individual before him, with his modest motorcycle and understated demeanor, didn't align with his preconceived image of someone like Tom Cruise. "Tom Cruise," the guard echoed, his inflection revealing disbelief. "Can you provide some identification? You don't particularly resemble someone who would reside here." The inquiry lingered in the atmosphere, generating an uncomfortable silence. Tom raised his eyebrows slightly, surprised by this response. He understood that as a new resident, verification might be necessary, but he hadn't anticipated such explicit distrust. "Of course, I have the property documents and lease agreement in my bag. I can present them if required," Tom responded, maintaining his characteristic composure. Though the discomfort of the situation was becoming increasingly apparent. The guard folded his arms and briefly glanced at Tom's motorcycle. It was a sleek, classic vehicle, but it lacked the ostentatious luxury that many residents likely preferred. The man seemed to be judging not just Tom, but also his choice of transportation. "I apologize, sir, but I cannot permit entry without system confirmation. And honestly, nobody mentioned anything about your moving in," the guard stated, his tone becoming more defensive, as if preparing to justify his decisions. Tom released a soft sigh, striving to remain patient. He didn't wish to escalate the issue, but the treatment he was receiving had begun to attract attention. In the distance, several condominium staff exchanged curious glances, and a passing resident discreetly observed the unfolding scene. "I understand you're performing your duty," Tom said, maintaining a calm tone. "But I assure you, I am indeed a resident. If necessary, I can wait while you verify with someone." The guard, however, showed no signs of yielding. He examined Tom once again, as if attempting to determine whether to believe him. The mistrust was evident in every gesture. "Are you certain you're at the correct location?" the guard questioned, this time with a slight undertone of irony. This condominium isn't exactly intended for ordinary individuals. Tom inhaled deeply. He recognized that losing his composure would only exacerbate the situation, so he decided to maintain his serene disposition. Looking directly into the guard's eyes, he responded with a calmness that was almost disarming. "Don't worry, I'm precisely where I'm supposed to be." The ensuing silence was oppressive. The guard appeared uncomfortable yet unwilling to relent. The twilight continued to fade, and the temperature gradually declined. In the distance, a figure briefly appeared at one of the building's windows, observing the interaction with curiosity. And then came the statement that would determine the course of the evening. "Contact whoever you need to," Tom said, his voice steady but firm. "I'll remain right here." The guard narrowed his eyes, surprised by this response. It was evident he wasn't accustomed to someone maintaining such composure in such circumstances. But what he didn't realize was that the night ahead would unfold a sequence of events that would transform his perception and that of everyone around him. Night was rapidly settling in, and the cool evening breeze began to envelop the condominium. Tom stood silently beside his motorcycle, while the security guard continued to evaluate him with obvious distrust. The atmosphere was tense, but Tom maintained his signature calm demeanor, even as the situation became increasingly uncomfortable. "Look, sir, Cruz, right?" the guard remarked, emphasizing the name as though questioning its authenticity. "I don't intend to be impolite, but your name isn't registered in the system. Without that confirmation, I cannot permit entry. You comprehend that, don't you?" Tom nodded, though the situation had begun to test his patience. He understood the importance of security measures, but the guard's tone indicated that this went beyond mere adherence to regulations. "I understand. But as I mentioned, I'm the new occupant of apartment 403. I have documentation to verify this, if required." The guard exhaled heavily, as though the situation demanded more effort than he was willing to expend. He glanced briefly at Tom's motorcycle, almost as if silently judging its appropriateness for a resident of such an establishment. "Very well, perhaps you possess some documents, but I would need management confirmation before allowing anyone entry. And truthfully, this doesn't appear to be the kind of place someone like you would frequent." He crossed his arms, giving Tom a cursory inspection. Tom, accustomed to being treated respectfully by most individuals, detected the condescending and prejudiced undertone in the guard's statements. He inhaled deeply, preserving his patience. "I recognize you're performing your duty, but perhaps there's been a system error. If possible, please contact the administration for confirmation. I'm content to wait." The guard raised his eyebrows and emitted a brief, almost derisive laugh. "You seem remarkably composed for someone attempting to access a place that, let's be honest, doesn't seem to suit you." He paused, clearly reconsidering his choice of words, "someone like you." Tom remained silent momentarily, carefully observing the individual before him. He knew that direct confrontation would only intensify the situation, but he couldn't disregard his treatment. "I'm confident you'll make the appropriate decision," Tom replied, in a calm, steady voice. The guard narrowed his eyes, as if analyzing Tom's tone for any hint of defiance. Instead, he found nothing but tranquility, which appeared to irritate him further. He reached for the radio attached to his belt and pressed the communication button. "Central, main entrance. We have an individual here claiming to be the new resident of apartment 403, named Tom Cruise. Can you verify this in the system?" His voice was abrupt and impatient. Tom observed as the guard awaited a response. Whatever the reply was, it remained inaudible to him, but the guard's expression clearly indicated it wasn't the confirmation he had anticipated. "Just as I suspected," the guard muttered, lowering the radio and turning back to Tom. "There's no record of anyone with that name. Perhaps you should double-check the address before insisting." Tom gripped his helmet firmly, but maintained his composure. "There's no mistake. This is the correct address. Perhaps the system hasn't been updated yet." These things happen. The guard scoffed, shaking his head with a sarcastic chuckle. Yeah, it happens. But I've worked here for years, and I've never witnessed anyone arrive unregistered, especially in an establishment like this. You understand my meaning? Tom slightly tilted his head, concealing the irritation that was beginning to emerge. I understand that protocols must be followed, but I've already provided the apartment number. And I can show you the documentation. Isn't that sufficient? The guard crossed his arms again, contemplating for a moment. Finally, he retreated a step and gestured toward Tom's motorcycle. Listen, all I'm saying is that things here operate differently. The residents of this condominium don't arrive on motorcycles like that. Perhaps you're accustomed to a different standard of living. He shrugged as if his words were merely an innocent observation. Tom inhaled deeply again, sensing the weight of prejudice behind the guard's words. He decided against an immediate response. Instead, he opened the bag attached to his motorcycle, extracted a folder, and extended the documents toward the man. Here are the apartment documents. Perhaps this will clarify matters. The guard reluctantly accepted the papers, skimming through them quickly. But his expression revealed that he wasn't inclined to trust the contents. These documents might be legitimate, but I'm not authorized to make the final determination. And truthfully, I can't simply accept someone's word. It's a security concern, you understand? He raised his radio again. I'll contact the administrator, but be advised, it might require some time. Tom nodded without speaking. He recognized that further argument would be futile at this juncture. As the guard made the call, the surrounding atmosphere seemed to grow colder. Tom gazed skyward, where several stars had begun to appear, and wondered how long this situation would persist. There was a mixture of irritation and sadness in his thoughts, not solely because of his treatment, but because of what it represented. The guard concluded the call and turned back to Tom with a faint expression of impatience. The administrator is presently occupied, but I'll await a response. Until then, you must remain here. I cannot permit entry without confirmation. Tom analyzed the man's words and actions carefully. He knew this transcended mere protocols. It was a decision clouded by judgment and bias. That's acceptable, Tom replied simply. I'll wait. The silence between them intensified, amplifying the tension in the air. The guard avoided eye contact, visibly uncomfortable with Tom's patience, as if expecting him to lose his composure. But Tom wouldn't. He knew that eventually, the truth would become evident. The guard stared at him momentarily, and with an almost provocative tone said, "Wait as long as you desire. I'm not the one who will grant you access." Asterisk. What transpired next would begin to alter the course of the night. Night was advancing, and the situation at the condominium entrance seemed far from resolution. The security guard paced back and forth, visibly agitated, directing looks of contempt toward Tom. The cool illumination from the entrance lamps reflected off Tom's motorcycle, highlighting the stark contrast between the modest man standing there and the luxurious environment surrounding him. "Listen here, Mr. Cruz," the guard initiated, his voice louder and harsher than previously. "I've made it abundantly clear you're not gaining entry. I don't understand which part of that statement confuses you." Tom remained calm, even confronted with aggression. He inhaled deeply before responding. "I'm simply waiting for you to take the necessary actions to resolve this issue." The guard chuckled, but it wasn't an expression of amusement. It was dry, almost mocking. "Resolve this? What do you imagine this is? Some inexpensive motel where anyone can enter without question? That's not the operational procedure here, friend." Tom tightened his grip slightly on the helmet he held. But his composure remained intact. "I never suggested you should violate regulations. I'm requesting that you follow protocol and contact the administrator." The guard shook his head, his frustration yielding to overt irritation. "Contact the administrator. You believe they'll interrupt their activities for someone like you? Honestly, I don't comprehend why I'm wasting time here. He moved closer to Tom, gesturing extravagantly toward the motorcycle. Look at that. You arrive on an outdated bike, narrating some story about residency, and expect me to believe you? This establishment is for individuals of a certain caliber, do you understand? People with refinement, with status? You think I'm convinced by this? Tom locked eyes with the guard, his voice remaining steady and composed. This has no relation to status. I possess documents proving my residency. All that's required is verification. The guard released a loud sigh as if Tom's words constituted a personal affront. He moved closer, directing a finger at him. Documents? You believe some paper is sufficient for persuasion? I've encountered various individuals attempting similar tactics. You consider yourself clever, don't you? But from my perspective, you're just another person in an inappropriate location, refusing to acknowledge it. Tom pressed his lips together but didn't respond immediately. He knew that any statement would only fuel the guard's behavior. I'm not departing, he eventually declared, his voice resolute. You may take whatever measures you deem necessary, but I will remain. The guard laughed louder this time, almost hysterically. Remain? Oh, you believe you're in control? You're not, friend. And I've exhausted my patience. This isn't your environment. Observe your surroundings. Everyone can discern that. Tom tilted his head slightly, his eyes calmly analyzing the man before him. So that's your conclusion? You believe I don't belong here because of my motorcycle? Because of my appearance? Don't present that argument, the guard interrupted, raising his hand. I've served as security here for years. I've witnessed everything, and I can distinguish between those who belong and those who don't. And you, my friend, definitely don't belong. He retreated and reached for the radio at his belt. Very well, that's sufficient. I'll resolve this immediately. He pressed the button and spoke, his voice heavy with exaggerated authority. Main entrance to Central. I have an individual refusing to leave. Claims residency, but isn't registered in the system and is causing a disturbance, requesting immediate police presence. Tom watched calmly as the guard communicated via radio, but there was a flicker of determination in his eyes. He wouldn't yield, regardless of the guard's words or actions. The guard deactivated the radio and looked back at Tom with a smug, almost defiant smile. Completed. Let's observe what law enforcement has to say about your waiting. Tom shrugged, his voice calm but with a hint of resolution. Excellent, perhaps they'll facilitate clarification. The guard narrowed his eyes, clearly annoyed by Tom's lack of reaction. You don't comprehend the gravity of this situation, do you? You'll regret this, friend. Not everyone emerges from such situations unscathed. Tom crossed his arms and slightly tilted his head. I'm present because I know I've committed no wrongdoing. The truth will emerge. Tom's composed response only seemed to intensify the guard's frustration. He began pacing, muttering under his breath. This is absurd. Appears here as if he owns the place. People like this just complicate my responsibilities. Time seemed to decelerate as both awaited the police arrival. The tension was palpable, and the guard cast impatient glances at Tom, as if hoping he would surrender and depart. But Tom maintained his position, unshaken. Eventually, the flashing lights of a police vehicle illuminated the entrance. The siren ceased as the vehicle halted, and two officers emerged. Their expressions serious as they surveyed the scene. The security guard immediately straightened, a satisfied smile spreading across his face. To him, this represented a validation of his authority. Opposite him, Tom stood calmly beside his motorcycle, silent but attentive to every movement. Two police officers exited the vehicle. The lead officer maintained a serious expression. While his partner appeared more relaxed, though both were clearly assessing the situation. The security guard quickly approached them, eager to present his version of events. "Thank goodness for your arrival," the guard exclaimed, indicating Tom. "This individual refuses to leave. He claims residency, but his name isn't registered. And he hasn't provided legitimate proof. He's creating a disturbance and obstructing the entrance. I've repeatedly requested his departure, but he refuses cooperation." The officers exchanged glances before directing their attention to Tom. The lead officer raised his hand to signal calm. "Let's resolve this," he stated. "Sir, can you explain the circumstances?" Tom stepped forward, holding his helmet firmly. "My name is Tom Cruise. I'm the new resident of apartment 502. Apparently, there's been a system issue, and my name hasn't been registered. I have documentation proving ownership. I've been waiting for resolution." The officer nodded, listening attentively, but the guard interrupted, gesturing impatiently. "He's maintained that narrative since arrival, and observe, I've encountered similar situations previously. Individuals fabricating stories, presenting counterfeit papers, attempting unauthorized access. You understand the situation. We can't accept his statement merely because he speaks politely." Tom directed a steady gaze at the guard but remained silent as the lead officer raised his hand again, interrupting the guard. "Let's proceed methodically," the officer stated. He turned back to Tom. "Do you currently possess those documents?" "Yes," Tom replied, opening the bag attached to his motorcycle. He extracted a neatly organized folder and presented it to the officers. The lead officer began examining the papers while the guard crossed his arms, rolling his eyes at each page turned. "Seriously," the guard muttered sarcastically. "You're actually expending time on this. Those documents could originate from any printer." The second officer, who had remained silent until now, observed the guard with evident disapproval. "Allow us to perform our duties, understood?" he stated firmly. The guard raised his hands defensively but couldn't resist further commentary. "I'm merely stating that it's illogical to waste time on someone who obviously doesn't belong here." Tom remained quiet, though a momentary flicker of irritation crossed his face for the first time that evening. He appeared about to respond but restrained himself. Meanwhile, the lead officer completed his document review and addressed his partner. "Everything appears legitimate. The contract is signed and registered. I see no reason for doubt." He then directly addressed Tom. "Mr. Cruise, thank you for your patience. It seems there was indeed a system error. We'll assist in clarifying this." Before Tom could respond, the guard stepped forward, his face flushed with frustration. "This is ridiculous. You believe those papers merely because they appear legitimate. Observe him. Observe his motorcycle. Do you genuinely believe someone like him resides here? This establishment isn't accessible to everyone, as you're aware." Both officers regarded him with surprise at his hostile outburst. The lead officer spoke firmly, his patience evidently diminishing. "Sir, this isn't subjective. We have legitimate documentation. He has every entitlement to be here." "Entitlement?" the guard echoed, his voice rising. "He shouldn't have approached the entrance. I knew immediately he didn't belong here. This defies logic." Tom, who had remained composed throughout, stepped forward and spoke in a firm but measured voice. "What specifically about me suggests I don't belong? My motorcycle, my attire? Or is it because I don't conform to your expectations?" The guard faltered momentarily, caught unprepared, but quickly reassumed his defensive posture. "This isn't personal. I'm performing my duties, ensuring condominium security. Individuals like you occasionally appear here attempting to present false identities." "Individuals like me," Tom repeated, his words sharp but tone unwavering. "That reveals more about your character than mine." The officers exchanged looks, their expressions shifting to subtle disapproval. The guard seemed prepared to retort again, but the lead officer raised his hand, silencing him. "That's sufficient," he declared, his voice firm and authoritative. The security guard was the first to respond, speaking with the same arrogance displayed throughout the evening. "Sir, I have control of this situation. This individual," he indicated Tom, "claims new residency, but isn't registered in the system. I've repeatedly instructed him to leave, but he refuses. He presented documentation, but honestly, it's unconvincing." The administrator glanced at the guard with evident irritation before turning to Tom. Upon seeing Tom's face, his entire demeanor transformed. His expression softened, surprise mixed with embarrassment replacing his earlier sternness. "My God, Mr. Cruz," he exclaimed, immediately recognizing the actor. "I sincerely apologize for all this. This is an enormous misunderstanding." The ensuing silence was almost tangible. The officers paused their document review to observe the administrator, while the security guard blinked repeatedly, as if struggling to process the development. "You recognize him?" the older officer inquired. "Certainly," the administrator replied, still visibly uncomfortable. "This is Tom Cruise, the new resident of apartment 502. We were fully aware of his arrival, but unfortunately experienced a system update delay. That responsibility rests entirely with us." He turned back to Tom, slightly bowing his head apologetically. "Mr. Cruz, please accept my profound apologies. This treatment is absolutely unacceptable." Tom remained calm, but his words carried weight when he finally spoke. "I understand errors occur, but the issue wasn't merely systematic. The problem was my treatment throughout this encounter." The administrator's expression fell, clearly mortified. He directed a sharp look at the security guard, who seemed to diminish under his gaze. "Is that accurate?" the administrator questioned, his tone icy and authoritative. The guard stammered, his voice faltering. "Sir, I was following protocols. He wasn't registered, and I—" "Following protocols," the administrator interrupted, his voice elevating. "Your actions weren't protocol adherence. That constituted blatant disrespect. Mr. Cruz is among our most esteemed residents, yet you treated him as an intruder." I. The guard stuttered, but the administrator wasn't interested in excuses. "I don't require apologies presently. We'll address this later." Turning back to Tom, the administrator's expression softened once more. "Mr. Cruz, please indicate how we might rectify this situation. I don't want you departing with this impression of our condominium." Tom studied the administrator momentarily before replying, his voice calm but resolute. "What transpired tonight shouldn't happen to anyone, famous or not. You must ensure this doesn't reoccur for anyone approaching these gates. Judging individuals based on appearance or preconceptions is unacceptable." The administrator nodded, his embarrassment evident. "You're absolutely correct, and I assure you, this will be immediately addressed. We'll review our security procedures to prevent similar occurrences." Turning to the officers, the administrator offered a polite acknowledgement. "Thank you for responding. Further assistance isn't required. Consider this resolved." The officers exchanged glances, nodded, and returned the documents to Tom. "Everything appears in order. Have a pleasant evening, Mr. Cruz," the older officer said. Tom nodded slightly in acknowledgement but then directed his gaze to the security guard. Taking a small step forward, he looked directly into his eyes. "I hope you've gained insight from this. It transcends protocols, it concerns human interaction." The guard attempted to respond, but no words emerged. He averted his gaze, clearly defeated. The administrator signaled for the gate to open. "Please, Mr. Cruz, allow me to escort you to your apartment to ensure everything is satisfactory." Tom shook his head. "That's unnecessary. I merely wish to enter and rest." The gate began opening slowly, and Tom restarted his motorcycle. He entered at a measured pace, but not before casting a final glance at the security guard. There was no anger in his expression, only a quiet, weighted silence. As Tom disappeared into the well-illuminated streets of the condominium, the administrator turned to the guard, his expression stern. "We're discussing this now," he stated, his tone permitting no argument. The guard nodded, his earlier arrogance completely vanished, replaced by subdued, embarrassed silence. Following the administrator's intervention, the gate finally opened for Tom, but the evening's events cast a lingering shadow. Clearly embarrassed by the security guard's conduct, the administrator decided on immediate action to address the situation. As Tom parked his motorcycle in the condominium's garage, the administrator approached, his expression marked by seriousness. "Mr. Cruz, while I've already apologized, tonight's events require transparent handling, not just with you, but with all residents and staff in this condominium. If it's not excessive imposition, I'd appreciate your participation in a brief team meeting." Tom, still composed despite everything, regarded the administrator thoughtfully. He recognized that the issue extended beyond simple misunderstanding. It concerned behavior, prejudice, and unfounded judgments requiring confrontation. "Very well," he replied after consideration, "let's resolve this now." The administrator nodded and swiftly arranged a meeting in the condominium's main hall. He summoned the staff and present residents, while Tom stood silently, observing the flurry of activity. The security guard, visibly uncomfortable, was required to attend, though his expression remained defiant. When all had assembled, the administrator began speaking. "Good evening, everyone," he announced, his voice resonating through the hall. "We're gathered because, unfortunately, an incident occurred tonight that contradicts the values of this condominium. Mr. Tom Cruz, our new resident, received unacceptable treatment due to administrative error and, more importantly, inappropriate staff behavior." All attention turned to Tom, standing beside the administrator. The security guard, conversely, seemed to diminish under the weight of these words, staring floorward. The administrator continued. "Tonight's events remind us never to judge individuals by appearance or assumptions. This condominium should welcome and respect everyone, regardless of identity or arrival method." He paused, then turned to Tom. "Mr. Cruz, if willing, would greatly appreciate your perspective. I believe everyone present could derive valuable insight from your viewpoint. I believe we've all experienced judgment at some point, whether for appearance, possessions, or lack thereof. And I know such treatment is universally disliked. So why perpetuate this behavior? Why not extend the benefit of doubt, offer respect initially, and let actions speak independently?" The staff and residents listened attentively, some nodding in agreement. Tom paused before concluding. "Tonight it was me, but tomorrow could be anyone else. I simply request that we remember kindness costs nothing. It's the minimum we can offer one another. Thank you for acknowledging this. I hope it initiates something better." The guard nodded, retreating to his position. The meeting concluded shortly afterward, with residents and staff gradually dispersing. Tom lingered momentarily, observing the emptying hall before quietly proceeding to his apartment's comfort. Thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoy this video, and learned a lesson. I would be grateful for your likes. Also don't forget to subscribe and comment on the video. See you soon.